In today's video, I'm going to walk through gluing in the colorful papers and making the pockets in this ephemera storage binder that I'm making from a composition notebook. This is part two. In part one, I showed how to tear and glue all of the pages. If you missed it, I'll link that video in the description box below. Watch that video first and then come back here. Hey, this is Phantom Charm Studios. My name is Tammy. Welcome to our brand new channel. We just started posting videos and I'm so excited about everything we're planning to share on this channel. And I can't wait to finish this fun altered notebook. After I glued all of the pages, I let my notebook dry overnight. You can see I already did a trial run on this red section just to make sure that I got my measurements correct. I'm ready to show you how I'm gluing my papers and making all of the pockets. This is a two-step process. First, we're covering the pages with the colorful pattern papers, and then second, gluing the pockets together, both the half pocket and the full page pocket for all 11 sections of the book. I'm adding my colors in rainbow order, and next up is orange. My plan for this particular storage notebook is to store all of the random leftover bits and pieces that I have by color. If you're using your own supplies, grab whatever you want to start with. I'm just looking for my paper trimmer because I need to trim this grid paper down a bit. You can always tear paper against a ruler if you prefer. The grid paper is going to cover the half pockets in my storage notebook. Here's my 2 sheets of the daisy floral paper that will cover the full page pocket. No need to trim those, it's just the grid paper that I need to make smaller. I want to leave a border all the way around so that we can fold the paper over the pockets to create clean edges. I'm going to trim the long side of the paper down to 6.5 inches. I will save this offcut because I can use it to add color to my envelope later if I decide to decorate the envelopes. That's the only cut I need to make, so I'll set the trimmer aside. And now I have a piece that's 6.5 by 8.5 inches. That gives me nice margins all the way around. Now, this doesn't have to be a precise measurement. All we're looking for is an overlap above, to the side, and on the bottom. And you want to have enough of a flap that can fold over to create that clean edge. I like using Fabri-Tac to glue this. This glue dries really fast and it doesn't warp the paper. I'm just going around the outside edge a bit, and then I'll add a bit of glue to the center of the pocket to give me some extra coverage. I just glued down my paper and I'll use my little spreader here to make sure that the glue gets pushed into the paper fibers. And I'm going to let this dry for a moment and glue down the pockets for the large full page pocket. I'm using this daisy floral paper for this pocket, and we'll do the same thing for this. This letter size paper is a little bigger than the composition notebook paper, so I'll position this to have the same overlap margin all the way around. There's not quite as much here on the top and the bottom, but there's enough here to create flaps that we can fold over to create the nice clean edges. No need to trim this paper down. I'm just going to glue it down and then I'll miter the corners to give me the flaps. When I glue the paper, I'll try to center it as best as I can to give me as close to the same margins on the top and the bottom as possible. The margin on the side will be bigger, but that won't matter once it's folded over. Remember these flaps that we glued down in the last video? This one is pulling up just a little bit, so I'm going to add just a drop of glue here, but we'll glue the paper right over the top of that and cover that up. I'm going to add a line of glue all the way around the outside edge. You don't want the edges to come up or pull away of your book. And I'll add more glue to the center as well. If you want to use a glue stick for this, go right ahead. I feel that the wet glue is a better binder for this step, but that's a personal preference. Use whatever glue you are most comfortable with. I'm just eyeballing this, trying to get the paper as centered as possible, but I'm not measuring. I'm placing this where I want it next to the inside binding and making sure to get good adhesion. I'll use my spreader tool again to push out the glue. I did get a little spillage over the edges and I'm just wiping that up with a paper towel. That's another reason I want this to dry just a bit before we make the pockets. I don't want to have any wet glue anywhere that might adhere where I don't want it sticking together. So that's the front side of the full page pocket. With my second sheet of this daisy print, I'm going to glue this to the back side of the pocket. These two pages will get glued together, but I'm not going to do that in this step. I'm just gluing my colorful papers to the composition notebook for now. Once again, I'm just adding glue all the way around the outside border and a little bit in the center of the paper, and then I'll glue down my second orange daisy floral paper. You just want to make sure that you're not getting the paper pushed into the binding. You want to place the paper as close to the binding as possible while still being able to turn the page. I'm making sure that there isn't any glue here in between these pages where it shouldn't be, and just smoothing out the glue. So now we have the front pocket covered in the grid paper and the front and back of the full page pocket covered with the daisy paper. I'm slicing off the corners at an angle, getting up as close to the notebook paper edge. This will help the flaps fold easier. I'm also going to do this on the inside edges as well, cutting from the paper down at an angle to the binding of the notebook. If we didn't do this, there would be extra layers of paper at the corners that will overlap each other and create uneven edges. My lines are not straight by any sense, so this doesn't have to be precise, and you don't need to measure a perfect 45 degrees. But you can always grab your ruler and draw a line if you don't like to eyeball. I'm folding over all of these flaps before I add glue so that I can make sure that I get a nice clean edge and I like where the fold is. If the paper folded over wonky, it's much easier to fix before the glue goes down. I do like to reinforce the folds with my spreader tool. A bone folder would work, a ruler would work, and you can just use your fingers. There's no need for special tools here. I'm pre-folding each flap in the same way so that I can see where they all land. You can see that the edges overlap just a little bit at the top, but don't overlap at the bottom. Because the paper in the bottom corner is rounded, we're getting more of a separation. Again, I don't measure. I'm not trying to achieve perfect folds. Once this is glued down, you're not going to see the flaps at all. I'm okay where these folds are, so I'm going to go ahead and glue each flap down. I'm adding glue around the outside edges and a little bit in the center. And then I'll reinforce my folds again with my spreader tool and push the glue into the paper fibers. These flaps will give us clean edges all the way around and will make the top edge of the pocket stronger. We want the pocket to be nice and strong because we'll be adding and taking out ephemera pieces from the pocket. With all of the flaps glued down on the half pocket, I'll do the same thing for both the front page and the back page of the full length pocket. Cut the corners at an angle along the notebook paper edge at both corners. And then cut away the corners on the insides as well, cutting down towards the binding. This will give you 3 flaps all the way around. I'm going to fold over each of the flaps before I add glue to make sure that they didn't fold at a wonky angle. And I'm going back over the folds with my spreader tool to make sure I'm happy with all of the edges. And now I'm going to glue these flaps down to the composition notebook paper to create the nice clean edges. When we glue these flaps at the round corners, you're not going to get a smooth rounded corner. So I like to use my corner rounder here to get a more consistent corner. Try to remember to do this before you glue the pockets together. These pages are pretty thin, so if you forget, You can probably still do it with all of the layers, but it's easier to do now at this stage. I'm going to repeat the same process for the back page of the pocket. Cut off the top and the bottom corners at an angle. Cut off the inside corners at an angle towards the inside binding. And then fold each flap over to make sure they fold right and I'm getting those nice crisp edges. Once it looks good, I'm gluing each flap down to the composition notebook paper. Folding the paper over takes a little bit of extra time, but it's worth it on the completed notebook. I'll grab my punch and round all of the corners. And that's all we need to do to glue down the papers. I'm going to work on my yellow section off camera and then I'll come back to show how to glue the pockets together. So now I've got my red, orange, and yellow sections complete. And you can see here how nice these edges look all the way around our book. Taking the extra time to create the flaps and fold over the pattern paper edges makes such a difference. Let's glue the pockets together in this red section. It's very straightforward, nothing special with this. My ephemera will go into this front pocket, so I want to add glue around the side edge and the bottom only. Grabbing my glue, I'm going to add the glue to this side so that I can see where the glue is going. And I'm getting close to the bottom edge and halfway up the side of the page. I'm just eyeballing this again. This looks good. And then I'll add glue down this side. I'm just going to let this pocket drop down and land where it wants to go. I see that it's not exactly flush against the bottom, but that doesn't bother me. If I were to cut that off to try to make it even, I'm going to lose the crisp edge. So I won't cut that. I'm just going to leave it where it is. And I'm going to repeat the same process for the full page back pocket. I'm only going to add glue to the outside edge and along the bottom edge to form the pocket. I'll get my spreader tool out to smooth both of these pockets, which will press the glue into the paper fibers to get good adhesion. Let me show you that one more time and I'll make the orange pockets. I'm adding glue to the outside edge and the bottom edge only. I'm letting the pocket fall where it wants to go, and then I'll bring up the sides to see if I can get the edges to align. That looks good to me. And I'll do the same thing for the full page pocket. Add glue to the outside edge and the bottom edge only. Bringing the two sides up, I'm going to try to see if I can get the edges to align better. So repeat that same process to glue all of the pockets for all 11 sections of the book. Once all the pockets are adhered and dry, I'll come back and show you how I'm going to finish off my ephemera book. All of the sections of my ephemera book are now complete. I have all of the papers glued down, all of the corners are rounded, and all of the pockets have been glued together. I just love how this looks with all of the colors in the rainbow. I printed two of these rainbow stripe sheets to use on the front cover and the back cover of my altered book. I also printed two other colors in blue and pink for the inside covers. Feel free to print whatever colors you want or to select any papers you want for your covers. I'm going to use double-sided tape for the front and the back covers. I don't always find it necessary to use on the inside covers, but if you want the extra tape there, feel free to use it. I like to use it on the covers just to make sure that the paper is sticking all the way around the outside and there's no gaps. If you don't have double-sided tape, just use the wet glue. I'll add wet glue as well, but I do like to layer this double-sided tape on the covers if I have it on hand. I'm using permanent double-sided tape, which leaves zero wiggle room. Once you place the paper down on this kind of tape, you're not going to be able to pull it back up the way you sometimes can with wet glue. With this kind of glue though, I know my paper is glued down around the edges really well and it's not going to pull up. I'm just using my blade on my utility knife here to try to get the backing off the last piece of tape and adding a small piece of tape to the bottom corner to cover up a little bit of an empty space. Now I'll get the fabric tack and glue the rest of the cover. I'm not being stingy here. For the covers especially, I want to have plenty of glue coverage. It's not enough just to have the tape around the outside of the cover. You really want to have a good amount of glue on the entire cover. And I like to add a little extra glue in each of the corners. I do need to grab my paper trimmer real quick here. Before I glue the paper down on the cover, I'm going to trim the paper. I want my rainbow to start with red, so I'm going to trim this off just a little bit. Red is the color at the beginning of the rainbow. Red is the first color in the book, so that's why I wanted this paper to start with red as well. Bringing the composition notebook back over, I'm gluing this down with the paper overlapping on the top, the side, and the bottom edge. But with my cover, I'm not going to fold over the flaps this time. I'm going to trim them off with a utility knife. I'm pressing the paper down over the edge to make sure it's sticking. And I'll grab my spreader tool as well to press the full surface area into the cover, spreading all of that wet glue out. And once I open the cover, you can see that I have paper overlap all the way around. I prefer to glue it that way rather than trying to match either the top or the bottom margins. It's easier to get it straight by just slicing off the overlap with the utility knife. Because of the layer of permanent double-sided tape, I just don't feel like there's enough time to try and align the edges. Just center the paper the best that you can and cut off the overlap after it's glued down. I'm going to repeat the same process on the back cover. Add the double-sided tape all the way around the outside border. I'm going to struggle a bit trying to get the backing of that tape off, but eventually I am successful. With the fabric tack, I will cover the rest with a good amount of wet glue. And I'm cutting my paper the same way so that my rainbow starts with the red on the far side. Laying the paper down, I'm going to use my spreader tool to press the glue into the cover and get good adhesion. I'm going to trim off the excess paper with a utility knife. I like to use a ruler up against the edge of the notebook. I feel like I get a straighter cut if I have something to cut against. But if you have a steadier hand and don't want to cut against a ruler, it's not needed. I'm using a self-healing mat to protect my desk. You could also use a glass mat for this. You just don't want to accidentally cut too hard and slice into your work surface. I'd rather cut the paper in this step. I don't fold the paper over the cover on these kinds of notebooks. I just don't feel like you need to. The cover is sturdy enough, and with the permanent double-sided tape on the front with all of that wet glue, the cover stays in place just fine. I'm going to do the same thing on the back cover, cut away the excess all the way around, and after I'm done, I will grab the corner rounder and round off all of my corners. For the inside covers, I will do the exact same thing. I'll add the blue page inside the front cover, and the pink page will go inside the back cover. I'm just using the wet glue for the inside covers. I'm not adding the double-sided tape on this side. I'm going to add a bead of glue all the way around the edge of the notebook with a little bit extra in the corners and in the center. And now that I've got this book pretty much set up, I've already got plans to create a couple more of these. I really wanted my first ephemera book to be set up by the colors of the rainbow so that I could use it for leftover random pieces that I can sort by color. But what are some of the other ways to set these books up? You can do it by your favorite kids. If you have digital kits that you print over and over, set up each section with a different kit. Or if you're a member of a monthly club and you want to keep all of the ephemera and leftover pieces together, you could create the book and then make all of the sections month by month as you get new kits. I want to create one of these notebooks for all of the leftovers from each of my kits for Phantom Charm Studios. This year, we'll have big journal kits for each season and then smaller ones for the upcoming holidays. You could also make sections for different things, like butterflies in one section, fairies in another section, flowers, vintage items, different themes, whatever you want, however you want to sort your ephemera. The envelopes that get tucked into the full page pocket will keep the smallest pieces together so you don't have to worry about them falling out of the book. I'm going to trim off the excess paper around the edges of both inside covers, and then I'll show you my completed notebook. I will add the word ephemera on the front cover with some sticker letters, but other than that, this book is complete. I hope you enjoyed this first project from Phantom Charm Studios, and you can see the possibilities for different ways to sort ephemera and the multiple books you could create. If you're interested in using the papers I've used, we do have a kit in our Etsy shop that is a digital download that you can purchase and print the papers yourself or send them to your favorite office supply store to be printed. I will include a link in the description box to our Etsy shop, and there's also a coupon code you can use for 35% off the purchase of 2 or more items that will always be available to our YouTube audience. We have more junk journal kits coming soon, and I've been adding a lot of new half-page kits as well. Thanks so much for crafting with me today. For freebies and much more, check out our Ko-fi page, Phantom Charm Studios, and I'll see you in the next video.